My name is Cameron.
And I'm Amanda.
And welcome back to Scam Series. Today we're going to be talking about the infamous Elizabeth Holmes, the former CEO of Theranos. While studying chemical engineering at Stanford University, Elizabeth Holmes came up with an idea that she thought would revolutionize and democratize healthcare. Her idea was this: an at-home blood test that could perform hundreds of tests with just a single drop of blood.
Currently, the only way to get a blood test is to go to the hospital, draw a large amount of blood, and wait for the results. This is not affordable or convenient for most people. Motivated by her fear of needles, Holmes ignored the words of her Stanford professors telling her the idea wouldn't work, and effectively dropped out of Stanford to pursue it full-time using her tuition money to file a patent for the idea.
Holmes came from a family of high achievers who accepted nothing but the absolute best from her. She also had an extreme obsession with Steve Jobs and wanted to emulate him in any way she could, and become the next Steve Jobs of the healthcare industry. Holmes' voice was especially deep, and there is some speculation that it's fake.
We are the only lab company that is actually really focused on leading with transparency.
After dropping out of Stanford in 2003 and filing a patent for her idea, she rented out lab space and acquired her first employee. With much convincing, the dean of her school at Stanford decided to back the idea and introduced her to many investors, really getting her company off the ground. In 2004, she decided to name the company Theranos, a mix of therapy and diagnosis. Haha, very clever.
Theranos began to rise dramatically and spectacularly. By December of the same year, Holmes had already received over $6 million of funding and widespread praise from all over Silicon Valley.
She began to acquire more and more employees, investors, and supporters from many different industries. Holmes graced the cover of Forbes magazine, being named one of the world's most successful entrepreneurs. She also delivered a widely popular TED Talk on the future of healthcare and how her product would bring widespread, affordable, and necessary data to so many people.
You can't engage the individual in changing outcomes unless individuals have access to the information they need to do so.
From the outside, things were looking good, and many even compared Holmes to CEOs of companies like Uber and Spotify. But on the inside, Theranos was unlike any other company. Elizabeth Holmes kept all information to herself, keeping employees largely in the dark on all company happenings. She also forced them to work long hours and on the weekends, incentivizing them to stay at work by catering every single meal to the office.
She also hired an employee whose singular job was to clock when people came into work and left so that she could know who was working the most hours. The turnover rate was also enormous. Elizabeth would fire an employee almost every single week and remain seemingly emotionless about these ruthless firings. Elizabeth was extremely controlling and ignored all information coming her way that didn't line up with her plans to revolutionize the healthcare industry.
The right to protect the health and well-being of every person, of those we love, is a basic human right.
Oh, and the product Theranos was producing didn't even work, and wouldn't ever work. Holmes brought on the most talented engineers in the industry, and many of them warned her that what she wanted wasn't even possible, only to be promptly fired. But from the outside, no one caught on to this for a very long time. Elizabeth was described as charismatic, and the investors she met were convinced that she would become the next Steve Jobs or Mark Zuckerberg.
She had a way of convincing anyone to do anything. The trouble really started when Theranos began working with bigger clients, namely Safeway and Walgreens. Theranos was supposed to install machines that would test users' blood right there in the Walgreens and give them results within minutes. The Theranos machines, however, did not work, but Elizabeth did nothing to stop these partnerships from being made. Essentially, Theranos began giving out wrong blood test results to the patients using their machines in the Walgreens stores.
Needless to say, besides being illegal, giving out false blood tests can make people potentially think that they have a condition when they don't, or make someone think they're fine when they're really not. Things really started to go downhill for Theranos when a former employee approached journalist John Carreyrou from the Wall Street Journal about concerns he had about technology not working and possibly harming the patients.
Carreyrou began to dig around, finding more and more information until he had enough to publish a story, bringing about the beginning of the end for Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. From 2015 to 2016, Elizabeth Holmes went from being worth $9 billion to $0. She was named one of Fortune's most disappointing leaders in June of 2018, and she was indicted on 9 counts of wire fraud. When something seems way too good to be true, in some cases it really is. So, was Holmes a sociopath? Was she a genius? Was she just delusional? Let us know what you think. And if you want to find out more about Holmes and Theranos, you can read Bad Blood by John Carreyrou, or you can listen to the podcast The Dropout, or you could just wait for the major motion picture coming out next year, and it's starring Jennifer Lawrence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time on Scam Series.